Okay. Good evening, members of the board. Sean Hopkins from the law firm of Hopkins, Sorgi, McCarthy on behalf of the applicant, Essex Homes of Western New York. Go next slide. So we're here this evening in connection with a project you've seen before, the project at 2350 Sweet Home Road. It's zoned MFR 5 and OB pursuant to a decision issued by the town board approximately 6 years ago. You can see the project site there. It's also important to note that the project site does include the former Average Joe's Bar and Grill, which was actually located at the intersection of Sweet Home and Ellicott. Next slide. And that's just to show you the zoning of the parcels in the vicinity. It's important to note for this presentation, the parcels directly to the south and the parcels directly to the west are zoned for single family or zoned SA, which does allow single family on larger lots. Next slide. Just showing you the buildings, which you'll probably recall. It's a series of 3 and 4 unit buildings. Next slide. So why are we here this evening? We're here this evening in connection with the request for one variance. What I'm showing you here is the landscape plan that was stamped as approved by the planning department all the way back on July 15th of 2019. Where I've shaded in blue is a 6-foot tall privacy fence. That green area is actually part of the project site that was designated as permanent open space, not to be developed because it's behind a couple of the existing homes. And on the approved landscape plan, there was a note, we've discussed this with the planning department, that stated some vegetation would be preserved on the inside of the fence. Well, it turns out that was probably a little bit inaccurate and that there really is no vegetation there that's worthy of protection. It's kind of scrub. So basically what we've decided to do is instead of providing that, provide some new trees. So this is a landscape plan that was approved back then. It is important to note that as part of this process, we did agree that 5.25 acres, or nearly 44% of the site, would be designated as permanent open space. And that permanent open space remains. Next slide. And this is the updated landscape plan. So this updated landscape plan reflects input per a meeting we had at the planning department back on July 9th. And basically what we're seeking an area variance from is a high impact screening requirement contained in the zoning code, specifically section 7-2-4B. And so where there's no trees existing today, what we're proposing is 25 white spruce trees with a planting height of 6 feet to be planted every 40 feet on the inside of the privacy fence. While that's not going to really enhance screening on the day it's planted, over time those trees will grow and will provide a nice buffer between the project site and the adjoining residential uses. It is important to note that both the parcels to the south and the parcels to the west are heavily vegetated. There's already a lot of vegetation, but if somehow, for some unknown reason, that vegetation was removed, this additional screening will enhance what's there today. It's also important to note that where I've highlighted in blue that 6-foot tall privacy fence that extends for a distance of approximately 1,150 square feet, under the high impact screening requirements, that fence only would have had to be 3 feet versus 6 feet. So it's actually taller than what otherwise would have been permitted. Next slide. So obviously this request is governed by the balancing test and the 5 criteria set forth in New York State Town Law, section 267B3B, which requires you to balance benefits that will be realized by the applicant and weigh those against any resulting detriments to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community. Here there are substantial benefits to the applicant. This puts us in compliance in terms of the landscape plan based on the discussions we've had with the planning department. Providing those additional trees will not be a detriment to nearby property owners. It will actually be an enhancement compared to what the screening is there today. Whether or not it will result in undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties, the answer, of course, is no. This will be positive impacts resulting from the additional 25 trees. Whether the benefit we're seeking can be achieved by some other method feasible for us to pursue other than the variance, no. In order to receive the benefit we're seeking, which is to address the concern raised about the landscape plan, we need this variance. Next slide. Criteria number 3, whether it's substantial. Here it's not substantial because there's no harm. Criteria number 4, whether relief will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood. The answer is no. And I would note that both the planning board, town board, as well as this board have previously issued negative declarations, and this particular request is a type 2 action. And then finally, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. And here I would say that's debatable because of the landscape plan that was approved all the way back on July 15th of 2019. Nonetheless, if you do find it to be self-created, the overall balancing test and the 4 criteria weigh in favor of granting the requested relief. And I also want to thank the planning department for being willing to meet with us and discuss a solution that's obviously subject to your approval. If you have any questions, I would welcome the opportunity to address them.
Does any member of the board have a question?
I do.
Ron?
Mr. Hopkins, I have one question. That area, that is left corner bottom, you said the green area that you pointed out, is that part of the condominium or not?
It is. It's part of the site.
But you're actually cutting it off with the fence?
Yeah, because the neighbors wanted that to be green space on their side of the fence. It goes back to the original approvals.
Okay,
There's 2 houses that
Yes.
back up to that.
Yes. All right. That answers that.
Any other member have a question for the applicant? Is any member of the audience here to speak on this item? All right, I'll close the public hearing. Would any member like to make a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by member Schubert, second by member Phillips. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passed 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on tonight's agenda is 6812, 6814, 6832 Main Street, and 2937 Terracing Terrace.
Good evening once again. Sean Hopkins on behalf of the applicant, 6812 Main Street LLC. Also with me is Paul Bliss. This is also a project that you've seen before, the redevelopment of 6812, 6814, 6832 Main Street, and then it includes 2 parcels on Tennyson at 29 and 37. It's highlighted in blue. Directly to the west at 6770, 6790 is Mr. Bliss's mixed-use project. And then behind in the yellow, which is subject to the next variance application hearing, is a project under construction, well under construction, and nearing completion at 6842 and 6846 Main Street. And then, of course, you can see we're in close proximity to the intersection of Main Street and Transit Road. Next slide. The photograph of the existing retail plaza. Mr. Bliss purchased this site approximately a year ago and began formulating redevelopment plans. I would also note that nothing in terms of this particular building and the parking complies with the code. You can see it doesn't comply with setbacks, doesn't comply with parking aisles, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole assortment of nonconformities. Next slide. The survey of the project site, yellow is the footprint of that existing building, and you can see the parcel extends considerable depth on Tennyson Terrace. Next slide. So you've looked at this project 3 times previously, and most importantly, during your original review, the parcel to the north, which is 37 Tennyson, you asked whether or not we'd be willing to agree to deed restrict that as permanent open space. There's a house there today, and we did do that. So the northern 90 feet of this site that's closest to the residential neighborhood will not be developed. There'll be no buildings, no parking, no access aisles, no driveways, et cetera. And we did record a declaration of restrictions per that condition you imposed late last year on March 28th of this year. Next slide. This is the site plan that we presented to you most recently on May 14th, and it remains almost identical, subject to one minor change. It's a 4- and 5-story building, first floor commercial, upper floor apartments, 117 parking spaces. You can see we have 2 driveway connections onto Tennyson, an internal driveway connection to the other mixed-use project at the back. And then also I want to note that since your previous review, the planning board did hold a public hearing, issued a negative declaration, and approved the site plan on May 16th of this year. Next slide. The elevation that we presented to you then of the 5- and 4-story building, that's looking from the frontage along Main Street. Next slide. So here's the updated plan. We need 2 variances. The first variance is a modification of a variance that you granted on December 19th of last year. That variance allowed a western side yard building setback of 10 feet. We're asking that to be reduced to 5 feet. And the reason for that is late in the review process, we became aware from National Grid that we needed to move the building so it would be 10 feet away from the overhead power lines. I've actually highlighted in orange where those are. So we've moved the building such that it'll be 5 additional feet from the eastern property line, hence the modification to the variance. I would note that there is no document on file that states it has to be 10 feet away. Nonetheless, for safety concerns and based on working in collaboration with National Grid, not only on this project, but other project, we moved it so it's 10 feet away. It's also important to note that the southwest corner of the building remains at 20 feet from the Main Street right away. So the first variance is just simply moving that building 5 feet to the west. Next slide. And then the second variance is for the ground sign setback. Strict compliance with the zoning code would require 15 feet. What we're showing there is 8 feet. If we pushed it back all the way to the 15 feet, it would actually be so close to the building that it would look very awkward. Rest assured, there's probably an additional 25 to 30 feet within the Main Street right away between the edge of the property line and the edge of the pavement. I think it's 25 feet. So this sign will not look like it's too close to Main Street. Next slide. Also governed by the balancing test and the 5 criteria. Obviously, no detriments. The benefits are we're complying with the input we receive from National Grid, will not result in any undesirable changes in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties. There are no other feasible methods for us to pursue other than the requested relief. Next slide. The area variances are not substantial because they will not result in any harm. In terms of whether there's any adverse effects or impacts on the physical or environmental conditions, no. Both this board and the planning board have previously issued negative declarations. And this particular request, I believe, is a type 2 action. And then finally, whether the alleged difficulty is self-created. And even if you view that it is, the balancing test and the 5 criteria weigh in our favor. However, I would note that this is based on input from National Grid. And unfortunately, the way planning process works, you never get input from National Grid early in the process. It typically takes place later in the process. So respectfully, we would ask that you grant the 2 requested area variances. Neither myself or Mr. Bliss would welcome the opportunity to answer any questions that any of you may have.
What is on the west side of the building that you're moving closer to, 5 feet closer to?
So the sidewalk, Tennyson, and then on the opposite side is Mr. Bliss's existing mixed-use building. Okay. So not moving it anywhere closer to any residential neighborhood. Residential houses don't begin till the top of that slide.
Does any member of the board have a question? Is any member of the audience here to speak on this item? All right, we'll close tonight's public hearing on this item. Would any member like to make a motion?
Second.
Motion by member Phillips, second by member Schubert. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes 4-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, 6842, 6846 Main Street.
Good evening once again. Sean Hopkins on behalf of the applicant, 6842 Main Street LLC. Also with me once again is Paul Bliss. So we're going to just move one parcel down to 6842 and 6846 Main Street. This is also a project that you've looked at before. It's a mixed-use project. Size of the site is about 2.6 acres in size. And why we're here today, this is important. That particular site is somewhat irregular shaped and that it only has 20 feet of frontage onto Main Street. Nonetheless, we have access onto Main Street via an easement that we obtained from the Flaum family for the parcel, the plaza located at the corner of Main and Transit. Next slide. We're asking for one, what I believe is very simple variance, and that's ground sign setback. So in this instance, the ground sign setback will comply with the required front yard setback of 15 feet. However, section 784B1E of the zoning code states that the side yard setback must be 25 feet. What we're proposing is a ground sign that will have an eastern side yard setback of 6 feet and a western side yard setback of 11.41 feet. Keep in mind that Paul owns the adjacent 6812, which we just talked about, and the property directly to the east is that existing retail plaza, the same family that we bought this property from. Next slide. Governed by the balancing test and the 5 criteria, to summarize, clear as day, this is the only way we can have Main Street frontage in terms of identification. We have a driveway there. It is oriented towards Main Street, this entire project. While we do have access onto Transit Road as well, as you know, there's a median there. We want to encourage vehicles to utilize the Main Street access. There are absolutely no feasible alternatives, meaning in the absence of this variance, There is no way we can have a sign, identification sign along Main Street frontage. The size of that sign will comply with the zoning code. If you look at any of Paul's ground signs throughout the town of Amherst, they're very well done. It'll have landscaping around the edges, some decorative lighting. In terms of whether it's substantial, no, given the nature of the request. Will it result in any adverse effects or impacts on the physical or environmental conditions? No. And whether or not it's self-created, I guess you could say it's self-created. The parcel is the configuration we purchased it with. However, we think the balancing test and the 4 criteria weigh in our favor. If there's any questions, either myself or Mr. Bliss would welcome the opportunity to address them.
Does any member of the board have a question for the applicant? Is any member of the audience here to speak on this item? All right, we'll close the hearing on this item. Would any member like to make a motion? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion by member Perker, second by member Phillips. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes 4-0. The next item on tonight's agenda, 4795 Sheridan Drive.
Good evening once again. Sean Hopkins on behalf of the applicant. This is the 4th project in a row that you've seen before. The proposed multifamily project to be located at 4795 Sheridan Drive. You looked at this project most recently during your meeting on September 17th. We all remember the site very well. It's slightly more than 2 acres in size. It's zoned MFR 5, does have an existing curb cut onto Sheridan Drive. Next slide. There's a copy of the zoning map just showing that this parcel is already today zoned MFR 5, and the adjoining house directly to the west also shares that same zoning classification. That was put in place by the town board in 2016. Next slide. Project timeline. So we've been at this for a long time. Submitted the application back in April, and as I indicated, I think this is now the 4th public hearing we've had. You granted 4 variances during your meeting on September 19th. Unfortunately, shortly after that, 2 days later, or September 17th, shortly after that, 2 days later, we became aware that there was a zoning condition the town board had imposed in 2016 requiring there to be a 115-yard front yard setback from the center line of Sheridan Drive. And as a result, we had to go back to the drawing board and modify the site plan. Next slide. So on the left is a site plan that we presented on August 13th, which was the basis for your decisions on September 17th. And then on the right is the current site plan. And just to summarize what we did, Building 2 is the building that's located closer to the Sheridan Drive right-of-way, now 65 feet from the property line and 115 feet from the center line versus 26 feet. So you can see we moved that to the south to comply with the zoning condition. Building number 2 rear yard setback, now 38.4 feet versus 35 feet. So slightly moved away from the National Grid property. We've also moved the building slightly in terms of the angle to comply with setbacks. And then finally, the side yard setback from the eastern property line of building 1, which is the back building, has been reduced from 48.51 feet previously to 39.41 feet. Next slide. These are the elevations we presented. As you recall, during your June meeting, there were some negative comments about the very conceptual elevations we had presented. We went back to the drawing board, met with Dave Sutton and his team over the course of several meetings, and substantially upgraded the architecture and the appearance of the buildings. Next slide. And that's to summarize those changes we made in terms of the architecture. That adds, based on the 2 buildings, an approximate cost of about $250,000. Next slide. On the top is the variance we're asking for. So again, zoning code would require 48.87 feet. We're at 39.41 feet. However, one of the variances that you granted on September 17th now goes away. And that was the front yard setback of building 2, the building that's closer to Sheridan Drive. We no longer need that because we've moved the building back. So it's 115 feet from the center line of Sheridan Drive and 65 feet back from the property line. And actually, from the perspective of the neighborhood, I think moving it all a little bit south is actually good because it gets it a little bit further back from the adjoining home. Next slide. These are the conditions you imposed that we suggested at your meeting on September 17th. One pertains to the architecture of the buildings, making sure that we follow through with that intent. And secondly, that we would install a 6-foot tall privacy fence and landscaping along the western edge of the project site, pursuant to a landscape plan to be developed at site plan, and the representation we made to you in our plan dated July 29th. Next slide. There's just a depiction of the variance that we're asking for. Again, the one instance in which we need an additional variance. And keep in mind, again, that property located directly to the east is a National Grid right-of-way, which is very wide. So no harm will result from this additional minor variance. And again, we actually think the layout of the project is improved slightly by pushing it back a little bit further from Sheridan Drive. I also do want to mention there's no change to the density of the project compared to what we've previously presented. Next slide. It's also governed by the balancing test and the 5 criteria. The benefits to the applicant are we can comply with the zoning condition imposed by the town board in 2016. On the other hand, with this particular request, we don't think there's any detriments to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community. Criteria number 1, whether the granting of the requested relief will result in undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties. Our answer is no. The site is zoned. The density is the same. We're proposing the same architecture. We're going to comply with the extensive landscaping per the high impact screening requirements along the west. We've only made one minor change based on the need to comply with the zoning condition that unfortunately we did not find out about until 2 days after your meeting. Next slide. Criteria number 2, whether the benefits that we're seeking can be obtained by some other method feasible for us to pursue. No, we have to move this building to comply with the zoning condition imposed by the town board. And again, the variance that we're asking for is from the National Grid right-of-way located directly to the east. Whether the request is substantial, no, it's a move of approximately 8 feet again of that building. We're still complying with density. Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions, you did issue a lengthy negative declaration on September 17th after being provided with very extensive reports and studies. All of those reports and studies hold true. But I do want to note, one of the concerns that was raised by the neighbor was the proximity of the front building to Sheridan Drive and a claim that it might block the view of vehicles exiting the site. Well, lo and behold, we are now 65 feet back. So despite the fact we had the professional opinion of a traffic engineer that would not result in concern, we've moved the building back. As a result of this minor modification, we will need to impact 1/10 of 1 acre of the regulated 100-year floodplain. That requires a floodplain permit from the building department, which is not uncommon. Nonetheless, we wanted to disclose it. And then finally, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. And here, because while we were unaware of it, there was a zoning condition imposed back in 2016 that can be viewed as an alleged self-difficulty that was self-created. With all that being said, we would ask you consider granting the requested relief. Neither myself or Mr. Savarino would welcome the opportunity to answer any questions that any of you may have.
What other approvals do you need to get on this project with this latest change besides
This project, so it's never, once we get through this process, then we have to prepare fully engineered plans. We file a site plan application. The planning board will be required to hold a public hearing prior to any decision on the actual site plan. And that's the planning board's jurisdiction, where they look at all the very technical documentation, including an engineer's report, a SWIP, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be the next step.
Then the floodplain permit, you've applied for that?
We haven't applied for it yet because, again, it would need to be based on the engineered plans.
Does any member of the board have a question for the applicant?
I just have a question, maybe of Mr. Ulatowski. How can we move forward with this, not knowing whether the floodplain permit will be granted?
My recommendation would be that you could hold the hearing open, adjourn the matter till the next month. I would highly recommend that we amend the secret determination previously made, as well as the findings of fact. But we still need to provide an opportunity for the public to offer their opinion on this change.
And we're okay with that. We just wanted to present it and see if you have any additional questions. But I would note, in terms of whether or not we'll get that floodplain permit, if we didn't get it, obviously we got a big problem, but it's almost an administrative review, meaning if you meet the technical details just like a building permit, generally speaking, you're able to get that.
So at this point, are we adjourning, or are we just holding a hearing open, or what?
I believe
course are we taking?
the matter still has to be open to the public for comments.
And we're okay with that.
Does any other member have a question for the applicant? Is any member of the audience here to speak on this item? All right, we'll adjourn this item for the next meeting.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
The next item on tonight's agenda is 66 Burbank Drive. Did you write your name and address on the sheet at the podium?
I did. Thank you. Is this graphic, can we show it was part of the application? Perfect, perfect. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My husband and I would like to remain in our home here at 66 Burbank Drive. It is a historic house, 100 years old, 100 plus years old. So in order for us to do that comfortably, there are two separate projects that we'd like to undertake. The first, if you look toward the bottom of the screen, would be creating a handicapped accessible side entrance. First of all, the existing side entrance is very small, and then a covered carport. So for that particular development, there are two places that we would be seeking a variance. The carport is not a solid structure, it's posts, and it's actually a quite elegant so it's not creating a solid wall for neighbors or for anybody. It'll actually really enhance the look of the home. So the posts are just steel posts. So we are seeking a variance because the posts are not within that 5-yard requirement. I believe they're at 3 yards. There is also a proposed shed on the property, and that would be used just to hold garbage totes, so they're closer to the street. So those are also not within that 5-yard side yard requirement. 5-foot side yard requirement. So the second development, that would be up at the top left, is a master bedroom suite addition. So the master bedroom suite addition is one level, low, 1-story, all glass. And as you can see there's a link to the existing house. Why didn't we build it right up against the existing house? That would be for issues of natural light. We also have extensive landscaping and historic trees that are in our backyard. And over the 20 years that we've been in the home, we've invested into enhancing the landscape, and also we'd like to protect what's there. So one of the big features of creating the master bedroom suite is our ability to enjoy the historic landscape and preserve the tree canopy. We would be seeking a variance. The actual development goes within 4 feet of the required 30-foot rear yard setback. It is actually set back. The existing garage is actually already set back further to the property line. The new bedroom is 4 feet from the property line. And I believe the final variance that we are seeking is lot coverage. So the lot coverage is 35.1%, and the allowable lot coverage is 35%. So I think I've explained, we're happy. We have plenty of graphics and pictures to answer any questions. These are some elevations. That would be, or if you could go back to the previous elevation, this is an elevation, the south elevation of the bedroom pavilion, and you can see that it's intended to be all butt glazed window system. It's intended to be a very quiet area, a sleeping area. We would not be disturbing our neighbors behind us because of it's low, it's fully fenced, and there's extremely dense and historic landscaping and a tree canopy for that property. So we believe that we're adding value to our home, to the neighborhood. It will be very high quality construction, and because the house is historic, we believe that we are sort of moving it forward into the future, and just continuing to respect to the historic character, but improving a lot else about it. So we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Does any member of the board have a question for the applicant?
I just have a comment. The garage is actually encroaches on your neighbor's property. At least that's what it shows on the survey and on that drawing.
This garage, the 1.5-story garage, gosh, that's been there for,
It just looks like it encroaches onto your neighbor's property. Okay. Thank you.
Have you reached out to the neighbors to the, where they're
well,
not?
the house directly behind us is actually vacant. It's been vacant for quite a long time. So it looks like there's just one more neighbor behind us, and we did not go over to their home.
And then the neighbor. Neighbors that would be on the carport side.
Oh, our next door neighbors, yes, they're aware. We're very friendly with them, so they know what's going on and seem just fine.
All right, is any member of the audience here to speak on this item? All right, I'll close the hearing. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by member Schubert, second by member Phillips. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on tonight's agenda is 111 North Maple Drive. Did you write your, can you just make sure your name and address is written on the sheet?
Good
Go ahead.
evening. My name is Jessica Buckle, agent for building owner of 111 North Maplemere, the 716 Health property. Along with me, the project lead, Dr. Brian McGrath. This property is a newly constructed 160,000 square foot medical office building with an 800 space parking lot. The lot spans approximately 6 acres. The building occupants are an integrated mix of healthcare tenants, which makes healthcare more accessible to the Amherst community. We're asking for a variance to increase the total signage square footage, as well as the height of the proposed ground sign and size of the directional signage within the parking lot. The character of the neighborhood will remain unchanged by this variance. The additional signage requested will aid the community, neighbors, patients, and visitors to the building to traverse the 6-acre area. Due to the size of the parking lot, there's not a feasible method to direct visitors to the building. The variance is not substantial in nature. There will not be any adverse impacts on the physical or environmental conditions. All signage, with the exception of the monument sign, will reside within the parking lot area. The signage will improve traffic circulation as visitors will be able to more easily find where they need to park and enter the property. This is not a self-created condition. The variance benefits the community and visitors to the site as it aids in directing patients to the area they should park and how to locate their doctor's office.
Thank you. So I haven't been to this facility yet. Is the entrances from the outside for individual doctor's office? Are they from the outside of the building, or do you walk inside of the building and go into the doctor's office from there?
You walk inside the building.
Okay.
There are 3 entrances labeled A, B, and C, and so you need to know which entrance to go into, which part of the parking lot to park at so that you're closest to the entrance. And another thing to note is that there's a very large orthopedic site. So when you have patients that are parking at one end of the lot and then they find out that they have to walk when they're already, they're there for that reason. So this is all in an effort for, you know, patient healthcare and making sure that we're, you know, benefiting the patients and visitors to the site.
Thank you. Does any member of the board have a question for the applicant?
So these images that I'm seeing, those would be the directional signs that you're asking for?
Yes. And so the idea is, as someone is driving through the parking lot, so that they're able to see.
I drove through that parking lot. It is confusing the way it is now.
Yeah.
Ron?
I just have, it says here, and maybe I'm missing something, each of the two buildings is labeled 500 Maple Road. I thought it was 111 North Maplemere.
It's 111 North Maplemere is the name of the,
This-
address of the
This says
property.
500. This is right up there, yeah. This says 500 Maple Road.
That's incorrect.
Could you come to the microphone and speak and make sure your name and address is written on the sheet up there?
Jessica can probably answer this just as easily, but we went through a series of locations, you know, for the land and which road you're going to say it's on. Initially, it was going to be, you know, backs right up to the gun club off of Maple. So the project has had a number of different addresses, 111 North Maplemere, Amherst, which also, when you Google, comes up Williamsville, and our patients don't know where they're going because a lot are coming from out of the area, which is fairly confusing when you Google Amherst, New York. But the address is 111 North Maplemere.
So it's not 500 Maple Road then?
It was previously part of 500 Maple Road. Northtown Plaza is 500 Maple Road.
This is dated August 24.
And while I'm up here, the reason for the sign variance is because our name is University Orthopedics, you know, UBMB Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, Great Lakes Medical Imaging. It's not TOPS and it's not Target. So it's very long names, otherwise the letters end up about this big. We had it all professionally laid out. We spent months trying to figure out how to do the traffic pattern through this to try and make it as seamless as possible. But there's 700,000 square feet of land we're trying to put signage on. So I realized the town says it's 160,000 square foot building, but the project is 700,000 square feet. We're trying to have exterior wayfinding signage for.
Did this go through the planning? You have site plan approval already from the planning board?
For the signage, the building's built, it's there, we've occupied it last August.
Yeah.
All the signage on, as you've seen when you were there, is all temporary signs, and they are too small, too difficult to navigate for everybody at this point, so we're praying that we get through this and then we can get the signs in and, yeah, make my partners and patients happier.
All right, is any member of the audience here to speak on this item? All right, we'll close the hearing. Does any member like to make a motion?
I move to approve.
Motion by member Schubert, second by member Parker. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a reminder. The next item on tonight's agenda is 1551 Niagara Falls Boulevard.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Matthew Oates, 570 Delaware Avenue with Benderson Development. We are requesting,
I want to interrupt you just for a second. I have to recuse myself from this one.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
next slide, please. Yep. We are requesting an area variance in regards to a setback for an interactive teller machine. It is setback 11.3 feet from the property line, where the code requires 50 feet. If you go to the next slide, please. This would be a blow up of the area, just a slight difference from an interactive teller machine versus the regular ATM. The interactive actually has a computer screen, so if there is someone who actually wants to have a teller experience as well, they actually can interact with an actual teller at that machine as well. It's not a feature that gets used very much, but it is something that the banks do like to offer for their customers. Overall, this is going on the south side of the TJ Maxx Plaza. It is being located in an area that is currently parking spaces. It is utilizing the existing curb line that is on the south side. And actually, as part of this project, there will actually be more landscaping in this area after we install the ITM than what is there now. This will allow us to provide additional buffering. In addition, with working with the planning department and going through the minor mod process, we have actually pulled the ITM further into the site, a little farther away from the entrance, provided additional buffering, and smoothed out the access drive coming in. You could please go to the next slide. In regards to the town law balancing test, if an undesirable change would occur, we don't believe an undesirable change would occur, as this is located in an existing paved area, utilizes the existing curb line. It is also located adjacent to another commercial plaza. There is a parking field right up to the property line on that side, along with an existing above-grade utility structure as well. In addition, there is another building in the area, the Michaels Building at Boulevard Consumer Square, that actually has a 0 setback to the property line as well. The zoning board has previously granted a variance for that, so we do believe it is consistent with the character of the area. Can the benefit be achieved without the variance? We don't believe it can. The goal is to keep the ITM outside of the main flow of traffic, keep it to the south, allow cars coming in for the entrance to be able to access the ITM, circulate and exit back out. If we had to meet the setback, we would then be placing it within the main parking field. It would add an additional obstruction, some additional traffic circulation patterns as well. So we believe having it on this side is better. And again, we can't achieve the benefit of having it outside the parking lane without the setback variance. Is the request substantial? We don't believe it is substantial. Again, it is in an existing parking area and utilizes the existing curb. Will it have an adverse impact on the neighborhood? We don't believe it will. In fact, we think having this actually set back to the south and not meeting the setback actually helps the overall traffic circulation by pulling it out of the main parking field and keeping it to the south where cars are able to access it better and keep it away from the main parking field within the plaza. And while it may be self-created, that isn't grounds for denial, as the board is aware. Happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Thank you. Does any member of the board have a question for the applicant? Is any member of the audience here to speak on this item? All right, we're going to close the public hearing. Would any member like to make a motion? Do I hear a second? Motion by member Phillips, second by member Parker. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Abstain.
That passes 3-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Next item on tonight's agenda, it is 4099 Tonawanda Creek Road.
Good evening. I'm Kyle Hoback, looking to build a pole barn on the back corner of my property. It's not uncommon in the area. There's several pole barns in the around my area that I have there. So what I'm trying to do is the outbuildings exceed the 75% square footage of the property, based on if you subtract the house and the other buildings. These, when we bought the home, all the other outbuildings were there. We did remove a small shed. It was the vinyl shed piece of it. And so we're looking to build a pole barn. I have a boat we looked to store. I have some other equipment. I have a small landscaping business. So I have a trailer and mowers and a small tractor. So we're trying to keep everything housed. And the structure is going to be built by stately builders, professionally built by them. So all the what am I thinking? The plans and that have been submitted there as well. We're going to also landscape around the area to make it so it's not going to be an eyesore or anything of that sort. But the property, the building is actually going to match the colors of the house. I've met with the neighbors. I did drop off a letter from the neighbor on the one side. He wasn't able to make the meeting with me tonight. He has no concerns with the property. I've talked to the other neighbors. No one else has any concerns. But it does exceed the square footage based on the out property there. So really just looking for a variance for that piece tonight. Any questions?
Thank you. So I believe that we all received the letter from Brian Monaco in favor of this petition. Does any member have a question for the applicant?
I do.
Member Schubert?
Where does Mr. Monaco live?
Mr. Monaco is immediate, so if you're facing my house, he's immediate to my right.
How close, is he on the pole barn side or on the
He's
other
on
side?
the opposite side.
Opposite side.
Tony Cioli is on the other side, and I'm very close with Tony, and he's well aware of this. I've gone through all the plans with Tony, so he knows what's going on. So, and I'm actually going to move it. I think I had 5 feet originally. I'm going to move it. It's going to be 12 feet from the property line, and I'm going to move it. It's going to be 10 feet from the back of the property, so I'm going to create a little bit more of a buffer there. And that's where I was saying too, I want to put some trees and some landscaping. I want to make it so it's nice. And it's the far back corner of our property as well. So, and there's large, I mean, obviously you can't see them here, but we have black walnut trees that are very old and stuff that block this even from the road. So it would be even tough to see it from the road.
And where would the drive run through, the drive to get to this?
It would, right from it's probably 30 feet from the property line, and it will go straight back to for 20, 25, 30 feet. I didn't draw that on there. I probably should have put that on the map, but it'll come from that.
Does anyone else have a question? Okay, is any member of the audience here to speak on this item? All right, we'll close the hearing on this item. Would any member like to make a motion on this? Motion by member Phillips, second by member Parker. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you very
so
much.
Appreciate your time.
The next item on tonight's agenda is 1265 Smith Road. Can you just make sure your name and address is written on the sheet on the podium?
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Jared Lusk with the law firm of Nixon Peabody. I'm glad you have this document up. Just to give you a little background. As you may know, it's been well documented. Verizon has been working very hard to improve the Verizon cell coverage in the town of Amherst. This part of the town of Amherst is in dire need of wireless telecommunications service. We have this application pending, and there's a second application that we just submitted within the last few weeks for a second site. We can go over that. But one thing, if you go to page 10 of this document, please. There you go. The problem with providing coverage to this area is it's a pretty desolate area, and more importantly, it's covered in wetlands. In this project, as you may know, in your town code, the town requires that item 2 or priority location 2 for wireless telecommunications facilities in the town of Amherst is on town owned property. And so when we looked at this problem, again, I'll say to you that the town of Amherst has been very active in pursuing improving wireless telecommunications service throughout the town. This is an area that was identified by them as well as us as a need for a tower in this vicinity. You'll see all the wooded area. There's a reason why the town owns a lot of this this land in this area. There's 9 parcels in particular in this area that are owned by the town, and we need to explore each of those with the town. The concern with 8 of the 9 properties is that they were completely covered in wetland. And so in order for us to put a tower on the site, we would need to disturb, including the entire driveway and the compound area, the complete area of wetlands. The chosen site has a large chunk of the site that is not wetland. In fact, the only area of disturbance for the tower on this site is approximately 0.23 acres. Will require an Army Corps of Engineer permit to disturb that 0.23 acres, but in evaluating all 9 of the sites with the town, This site was determined to be most effective from an RF perspective as well as developable in a sense. In order to get the Army Corps of Engineer permit, you have to demonstrate that it's the minimum disturbance to a wetland that is feasible. And with the other 8 sites, since so much more of the property would need to be disturbed, this site is the most feasible and therefore can be mitigated to the maximum extent. So we have room on the property to with a quarter acre, less than a quarter acre, we could mitigate the wetlands appropriately. With the other sites, we could not. So then we had to hone in on this particular site, being it's a town-owned property. We worked with the town, worked on the site plan, developed the project. But again, this is the area that it needs to be. And again, your town law requires us to locate on town property first. So that is why we're here on this site. If you can keep scrolling down briefly, I'm sorry, yep. So these are the coverage usage from the surrounding sites. I won't bore you with the need for it. I think nobody in this town disputes the need for Verizon coverage in this area. And again, we've been after this site for many, many years. But if you keep scrolling down past 10, you're going up. I'm sorry, whoever's scrolling. Keep going the other way. Yes, thank you. Keep going. That's the coverage area. This is the existing coverage in the area. And if you can see it, maybe it's because of the colors. If you see in the mid lower left of the site, you'll see the Sugar Hill. You'll see that noted. That is the second site that we're proposing, and that's going to be at the East Amherst Firehouse. If you see 2 sites to the north is our Swarmville site. Again, green is good, yellow is better, brown is bad. So you can see that in this particular area, we don't have good coverage. So if you scroll down a little further, again, the green has been added. So when these 2 sites are added, you'll see that we're generally improving the coverage in the area. And we're proposing a 115-foot tower on the Swarmville site, again, to both minimize the height necessary just to be above the trees, but also get decent coverage. So we're trying to balance the impacts, the visual impacts, with the need to get the coverage and fill the gaps. If you'll keep scrolling. All right, so again, this is a different frequency. This is the 21 megahertz. White is horrible, right? White is no coverage. Yellow's better. Green, if you keep scrolling down, you'll continue to see the improvements that these sites will make. This is a better graph or plot to show you. This area it shows you the Crystal Springs, which I don't know if you can see where the red, that is the sector of the current site that is currently covering the area. It's too much traffic and radio traffic, phone traffic in this area to be served by this. And so again, that is why we're putting these in here. And when you see, if you scroll down to the next, you'll see, again, this is the green that's going to be provided, the coverage that's going to be provided by this site. And again, the Sugar Hill that I assume will be heard from you in short order within the next month or so but you can see blue is good, that's reliable coverage, existing coverage. This area here will now be completely covered with these 2 sites. You can see that the gap is gone. That's why we're doing what we're doing, etc. I'll stop there and ask if any members of the board have a question as to why we're doing what we're doing, and then we'll get into the specifics of the site. Okay, could you pull up the site plan, please, sir? Okay, and this is we can start here. You can see the little arrows that's the wetland. You can see it on this, and if you can see that this line that I'm pointing to right here, that is this is the beginning of the wetland, and so this is not the driveway all the way in is not wetland, and that little driveway in and the compound itself is located in the wetland. Again, the minimum disturbance that the town and we wanted to be in and amongst the trees to hide the tower from adjacent properties to the extent that we could. And again, so this is the best location to be able to shield it, provide tree cover around it to the extent we can, but also minimize disturbance. As you'll scroll down to the next, this provides a little further detail actually this is the line of the wetland. You can see it's this area right here that's disturbing. None of this area is in the wetland. That provides you a little greater detail. And again, the towers here were the appropriate height away from adjacent properties, the residential property, we are within 500 feet. Your code has that very restrictive requirement to be outside of 500 feet from residential property. It's very hard, and particularly in this part of town, to be anywhere outside of 500 feet of residential property. So if we're going to deliver service, we need to be within 500 feet of residential property. And again, your code also requires us to be on the town property. So again, we're trying to comply with both the town requirement and deliver service. If you want to proceed to the next page, keep going. All right, so importantly, this is the area. You can see the dense trees that are, you can see on the aerial. And again, also in deference to at the request of the town and in deference to the neighbors, we've proposed a series of landscaping trees to further add additional screening to the tower site from the adjacent properties. Again, there is dense tree cover, and again, we've tried to avoid the removal of trees to the extent that we can to place a tower in and amongst it to, again, minimize the impact on adjacent properties. Standard tower, again, we have space for, again, typical, you've seen, I don't want to bore you, it's the same type of equipment at the base of the tower. There's two basically refrigerator-sized equipment cabinets in that area. And again, the tower here, propane generator, we're in a wetland, so there's no fuel. It's a propane generator to operate the facility and when the power is out. And there's two spaces in the compound for future co-location should another carrier need to co-locate in this area. Importantly, this project, we're requesting two sets of waivers. One of them, the 500-foot setback, again, which is pretty typical. We seem to need that in most wireless applications based on the code, but the inability to actually deliver service with that requirement. But secondly, the tower, in your code, you require that the fence be at least 25% of the tower height away from the base of the tower, so 30 feet in each direction. Again, like other sites, but in particular this site, we're trying to minimize the disturbance. If we were to comply with that strict requirement of the code, we would disturb more wetland, and again, it's not necessary based on the design. So the Army Corps would ask, why do you need to disturb so much when you can have a much smaller? So this is the minimum compound size, et cetera, that we can have for the town, and again, still provide that space for co-location. So we're trying to, again, balance all these interests and deliver that. So again, that's why we're asking for a waiver of that fence setback requirement from the base of the tower that would require more disturbance in the woods and in the wetland. I can stop there if there's any particular questions. The tower is 115. We provided that plot that shows you the need to be over 100 feet, and the code therefore authorizes the board to consider that. This project is a three-step process. We need to be able to get the zoning process. We then, as I indicated in our application, because this is town land that has at some point been designated parkland, the town needs to seek New York State legislative approval to alienate this land. That process is going, and we also need to pursue an Army Corps of Engineer permit. They need to see the approval from the town in order to process that application.
Thank you. So you still have to receive a lease agreement with the town board on this?
Town board, that is in process and working with the town attorney's office. Mr. Ulatowski's well aware of that, but we're well in that process. We've leased from the town before, so we don't expect that to be an issue.
Yeah, just for the members' benefit, we met with Senator Sean Ryan a week ago and Assembly Member Karen McMahon this afternoon, requesting alienation of a portion of this property for this project that will be considered by the state legislature, we believe, in January. The town attorney's office is currently reviewing a draft lease, which Sam Alba can speak to, but what we are asking is that if you do consider this tonight, to put two conditions on the approval, one of which would be subject to the review and approval of the town attorney's office for an approval of the lease by the town board. And then if there should be a need for supplemental screening after the driveway is constructed, that the petitioner accommodate additional screening for the benefit of the neighbors most impacted by the proposed driveway.
Thank you.
And those conditions are perfectly appropriate. We tried to plant the trees where appropriate, but we're happy to work with the building department or whichever department deems it that you deem appropriate for us to add that additional planting if need be.
Does any member of the board have a question for the applicant? Thank you. Is any member of the audience here to speak on this item? Okay, so I think the first vote that we would have to take on this would be a negative deck. Would any member like to make that motion? Motion by member Phillips. Is there a second? Second by member Parker. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The negative deck has passed 4-0. Would any member like to make a motion on the approval of the item?
With the subject
Yep.
to the conditions.
Motion by member Phillips. Is there a second? Second by member Parker. With the approval with the two conditions, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes 4-0. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Mr. Ulatowski, am I going to get a resolution that has those?
You will get a written affirmation via email from our town clerk's office, along with the secret determination, and we'll continue to work with you as well as our town attorney's office.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The next item on tonight's agenda is a special use permit for 128 Casey Road. Just make sure your name and address is written on the sheet on there and make your presentation.
Hello, my name is Jenna Granto at 128 KC Road. I am seeking a type 2 home occupation application. I am a licensed esthetician. I have been working and doing lash services and event makeup since 2017. I recently moved to East Amherst and am just looking to continue to work from this home as I did in my previous home in Cheektowaga. And I would just be looking to have about 2 clients per day at the most at my home between the hours of 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. when my kids are in school. And there would be no noticeable difference to the structure of my home. I have an 88 square foot former laundry room on the first floor of my house that I'm just looking to work from.
Thank you. Do you plan on having any type of signage on the outside of the house?
No.
Does any member of the board have a question for the applicant?
You had set forth the conditions that they would park in your driveway and.
Yes, I
all
have
of
at least room for 6 cars in my driveway, and there would just be 1 client at a time.
Is any member of the audience here to speak on this item? All right, we'll close the hearing. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, we need the secret determination on this one as well.
Sorry, negative deck. Would any member like to make a motion on the negative declaration that was handed out?
Move to approve.
Motion by member Schubert, second by member Parker. All in favor of the negative deck? Aye. Passes 4-0.
Thank you.
One more vote.
Okay.
Would anyone like to make a motion on the item now, on the special use permits? Which conditions were those on the? Okay. All right, so motion for approval from member Parker with the conditions provided by the applicant. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Second by member Schubert. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes 4-0. Now you're good.
Thank you.
The final item on tonight's agenda is 438 Caledine Avenue. Be the applicant. You want to have your name and address written on the sheet up there, and then make your presentation? Go ahead.
Um, uh, Good evening. This is the like my front of the house. Like I put like the fence like the for my baby safety. My baby is the autism, so is problem is two time is hit by a car like is gonna be, and my neighbor is not like to my baby go there. He's autism. He don't understand. He don't speak and you know. So he's now autism going autism in school, but the
Sorry, could you just like speak a little bit slower? I'm having a tough time to understand you.
okay. I'm talking about I put a fence for like my baby safety, and my neighbor she don't like to go my baby there because he don't understand anything and he's autism. He don't speak and he just run whatever he wanna. He, and two time is almost hit to by car, so that's why I'm very scared, so I apply for the pants for my baby safety. He's almost 4 feet, so when I put like 3 feet, he can cross easily. He can run away, like it's unsafety for my baby.
Does the fence go down the property, the side of the property to the left?
Yeah, my neighbor they don't like to my baby go there. The couple of time they complain me because he open his pant, he pee over there, he don't understand what he doing. So the both side neighbor they always like doing don't come in your baby my property, they say like always doing like this, and I tell them but he don't understand. He don't speak and he don't listen anything like that. Because they don't give me permission, that's why I don't put that thing. So there's a hold work like after you get permission then close the driveway thing.
I don't know if I understood that answer. Is it closed off or not?
To make sure I understood this, I think you put a hold on that until this process went.
Yeah.
Okay, so the front, oh, so that's the 4-foot fence. It's already up.
How old is your child?
6 year.
Does any other member have a question? All right, is any member of the audience here to speak on this? Come to the podium. Say your name and address written on the sheet.
Mike Colella, 420 Caledine, already on here.
All right.
4 down from his house. Blatant disregard for checking with the town before they do anything. I have additional pictures that show that he actually finished that fence. He also dug up his grass, put it in concrete himself, took the remainings, put it on the other side on town property, which is dumping as far as I'm concerned. Also put an apple tree in on the front, not asking the town because that's town property. You're not supposed to do that. It's supposed to be just one tree there. It's horrible. It's ugly. It's lit up at night. And every parent should keep an eye on their child. All I can do is show you a picture on my phone. Across the entire thing, up and down, left and right. There's X's that go between the pole, between the pole, between the pole, all the way up one side and all the way up the other side. It's obnoxious. If you get, absolutely, ma'am.
I'd like to see the pictures.
Yeah.
Can we do that? Yes.
You can zoom in. And nobody else in the neighborhood has this. We have signs in the neighborhood that have deaf children, yet no obnoxious chain link fences. But before permits.
Can you just go return to the?
There's other pictures on here. Like she has.
I think we can you just?
Because you asked if it went all the way up, and it does. At the end of the day, I mean, how many more things is he going to do blatantly without checking with the town code first? I understand he's got concerns with his child, but so does every other parent in this neighborhood. I think it should be taken down, and if you're going to put up a fence, put up something that doesn't look like that. It makes our hood look like a hood. And I've been here since 2004. I've owned the house for 20 years. Those two people live 2 down, 3 down. I live the 4th down. I see it every day, and it's obnoxious.
All right, thank you.
If you're going to be a parent, be a parent. Don't put a fence up. That's not a parent.
Would any other member of the audience like to speak on this item? Go.
Paul Campbell, 426 Caledine Avenue.
Is that written down on there?
Yes, I'll get that on. My only concern is if these people are allowed to start building like this without permits from the town, what else will they try and build? I mean, if I've got to have a permit to do something like this, I believe they should also. And it is not very attractive on the street.
All right, thank you.
Surveying. Oh, yeah. A lot of times it's the sidewalk.
I have laryngitis, so I can't speak very well, but I live 2 doors down, and it's atrocious. And if you can see, the front fence is always open. So a child could always leave that driveway because the fence, every time I drive by, is always open. And like one of the other gentlemen said, they have these bizarre lights on the fences. They're not for a holiday. They're just annoying to look at. And now I have forgotten everything. Oh, and on their yard, to my neighbor's yard who sold her home, they have all sorts of plants attached to her home. So that's where they don't have a fence on this side of the driveway. They don't have the fence going all the way back. So on the back portion, they have all these plants attached to my neighbor's house.
I'm not fully grasping what you mean. So what do you mean they have plants attached to your neighbor's house?
Yeah. I mean, you can't have your property on your neighbor's property.
Are they actually attached to the neighbor's house, you're saying?
They touch, I don't have the nerve to walk down their driveway to see, but you can see from the sidewalk that there's all and I think he has a picture of it. Right, right. And I don't know what else to say. It's just within the last 6 or 8 months, and it's an embarrassment to live there with the chain link fence. And like I said, it's always open. So the child could leave at any time, and there's nothing there to stop them.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Other member of the audience here to speak on this item?
If you need to see them.
We'll let you know. We'll give the applicant a chance to respond to the comments.
Yeah, because I don't put it permanently closed because I don't get any permissions. When I get permission, I put a lock always because like that door is not going to be open. Because right now I don't get a permission, that's why I leave it open always. You know, when I get permission, I'm gonna hook it up and lock the door. So I can use the little one, like I can walk down this one, and always I'm gonna lock this because 2 times hit by a car, like it's my baby, like I'm really scared when he gonna be die. You don't understand.
Let me interrupt you because everything I'm hearing is that this is not an enclosed area, so it's not going to contain your child to begin with. Is that true?
Sorry,
It's not an enclosed area.
close means
The fence is not all connected and closed. There are ways for your child to get out.
no, is all of the round is closed. Only driveway is always open because I don't the give a letter for do not finish your work. So that's why I leave it open always. So when I get the permission, I'm gonna put a lock. Then they cannot out. And all round of the is the fence like it's gonna be. It's my baby cannot outside.
What's the story with the lights?
Light is gonna be the Halloween thing is coming. That's why I put it the over there. So if they don't like, so after Halloween I'm gonna take it out.
Does anyone else have
I
a
have
question?
a question, maybe Mr. Ulatowski. Can you confirm whether or not this fence is actually on his property or is it on town property?
I cannot confirm the location of the fence. Building inspections responded to a complaint and issued a stop work order. And the petitioner was cited for exceeding the maximum height within the required front yard. That fence, if it were installed correctly on his property, it could not exceed 3 feet in height. That is why it is before you, because it exceeds 3 feet in height.
So,
But I can't confirm its location.
We don't know yet if it's on town property or on his property.
Cannot confirm it.
I just want to be clear. So the request before us is whether it is a 3-foot fence, which is he would be his right. This would not be an issue for this board if that fence was 3 feet, but because it's 4 feet, it is now before us.
Correct.
There's another issue too, whose property it's on.
But that's not the request before us. The
No, I
request
know
before
that,
us
but I have trouble approving something if I don't know whose property it's on.
You could direct the building inspections office to measure its location from that survey to confirm that it is on his property. And table the matter till the next meeting.
Can we take any interim action?
It-
Like
it-
with regards to the lights or anything like that, so potentially for a month at least? That's not disturbing the neighbors?
If you wish to give the petitioner direction to assist his request, by all means.
I mean, I think, you heard from your neighbors, they don't appreciate the lights. I think if this ultimately does get passed by this board, a condition of the board would be not to have any sort of illumination stemming from the fence. So our strong advice to you would be to take down the lights until such time as, this board considers this item again. I think we're going to adjourn this item for this meeting. We will have the town do a measurement to make sure that it is on your property, at which point in time we will then consider the request, okay? This hearing is over, so you can make a comment at the next meeting if when it comes back before us, okay?
I have one question. Like, I take a vacation. This month is 30th, so for 3 months, maybe I'm not. I am come back like January 30.
Next meeting,
Yeah, because I'm gonna see my baby doctor, my country that they're gonna train them. They can speak. I'm trying to do like better. I can better him, different like thing. This, yeah, I come back here January 30.
well, then you have to come back before then.
I have to come back tell them, or I get any letter. What I have to do?
We're gonna adjourn this to January.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
February?
February. All right, that was the last item on tonight's agenda. Could I get a motion to close the meeting? Motion by member Phillips, second by member Schubert, all in favor? Aye, pass 4-0. Thank you very much. It's going so smooth until the end.